Welcome to what promises to be an educative and instructive session of Off the Cuff OTC, because our guest today is a silent scientist who usually lets his work speak. Very unusual and very special for us to have Dr. Kiran Kumar, Chairman of Indian Space Research Organization. Every time we are feeling low in our country, they launch something from one of their launch sites. And sometimes it can be 104 satellites, sometimes it can be GSLV, Chandrayaan, the Mars mission. They always give you something to lift your spirits. So next time you're feeling low about something, look at what's coming from ISRO. So I'm very grateful. He's a very busy man and has a lot to do in Bangalore. So wonderful to have you with us, sir. And to give me company and to do most of the conversation, because he's better informed than me, is Manu Pubby, our Deputy Editor for Defense and Security Affairs. But defense, security, strategic affairs are very interwoven into ISRO, although ISRO is a purely civilian organization. So, sir, welcome to Off the Cuff, and welcome to Delhi. I know that, Delhi, you people don't like to come to Delhi also because you live in Bangalore. Which is India's feel-good city. So, we in Delhi believe that nothing in the government can work well. Nothing works well, nothing can work well. I might have written this line 100 times, that something was doing well, it got the government of India a kiss of death. So how does ISRO manage to keep on doing so brilliantly in spite of being a government organization?
No, I think for this we really need to give credit to our the forefathers of the program, Dr. Sarabhai and Satish Dhawan, because they put the entire system and a mechanism in place where the people of this organization had a prime objective in mind and bringing in the use of space technology for the benefit of the country's developmental activities. So they made sure that they set up an architecture of the system where the people working in this organization concentrate on what they are doing, how they can deliver, and we should definitely give credit to them for what is happening in ISRO even today.
So what are your interactions with the government like, with Delhi like? Because we know that, say, defense, for example, professionals there, which is soldiers, generals, admirals, air marshals, they are always complaining about bureaucracy not understanding their business and interfering or slowing things down. What are your interactions like with the bureaucracy and the political class?
No, what we can definitely say is, because the way the whole program started, being a technology of space, much of it was not known how it will operate. So it also gave, you can say, a kind of freedom for the people, because the technology is also very different and not much of ground interaction or intervention is required. So all the governments have also given enough freedom to the organization for concentrating on its work and deliver. So to that extent, you can say the Indian Space Research Organization has also had the benefit of being at a distance from whatever you're talking about.
It's in a different trajectory and orbit, if I may say so.
Yeah.
So what are the most interesting questions you get? Space has always invariably been kept by the prime ministers, mostly. I think almost always. Always. So what are the most interesting questions you've been asked by top political leadership, particularly prime ministers?
No, what they have been asking us is, they have also realized that space as a technology has tremendous potential, tremendous capability, which can address many of the issues we are facing on ground. Because space, when you put a satellite in orbit, it does not see state boundaries or national boundaries. It can see across things. So as a result of that, you can get a huge amount of information which is relevant, and it can also produce systems which can link the entire country. So they are looking at how we can make better communication system, better information required for whether it's for planning, monitoring, and as the technology is evolving more and more, whether it is navigation, location-based services, or even mobile applications. They are looking at how we can bring in all of this for addressing the problems we face today in the governance. And even the current government has made it more and more effective, because over a period of, you can say, last 3 to 4 decades, while we are trying to do a new technology and bring in information, naturally when you go to somebody and tell him that you can do a job what you are doing better by this method rather than what he is doing, one of his first natural reaction will be, who are you to tell me? I know my job better. So, but then over a period of time, once you keep persisting, they do realize, okay, there is a merit in what is being talked about, we can adopt. But current system actually has made use of the space technology in very many ways and is aware of how it can be put to use. So now today we are working with almost 60 departments, government departments.
Including agriculture, I believe, for farm insurance.
Yeah, including crop insurance, and then identifying certain activities, how the insurance can be better provided to the farmers, the kind of information that can be provided from the space, it's going on.
This city also, particularly in this patch of land, Lutyens, Delhi, this is the heart of Lutyens. We can also put things in orbit, but those are files, because usually any file in any ministry is put in the orbit and it keeps rotating all the time. It never comes down.
Actually, the satellites, if you look, they always come down.
Always come down.
Because they follow the natural laws of physics.
But these files, that's what I said, your satellites ultimately come down or become debris after they finish their life, but these files can carry on.
So the other success story for ISRO has been their interaction with the private sector. We see a lot of representation here today, and the way that ISRO has worked, getting the public and the private sector to jointly do projects is very unique in this system. So what do you attribute this to, and how do you rate the Indian private sector right now to scale up this space program of ours?
See, what has happened is, in the initial days when we started the work on this, because the very nature of the work, information and technology is not easily accessible. You have to do indigenous development, and at that time we should give credit to many of the industries in the country, because though they realize the work they are doing is not going to be commercially remunerative, and they were ready to take the brunt of the work, because you have to do a lot of effort, a lot of quality control, yield is low, and we do not have large number of launches per year, they are far in between. So in spite of that, they were ready to take up the task and do the work. And in terms of technology itself, ISRO, by the very nature of the work and the need, it had to work with the industry, make sure that industry understood the intricacies of the activity and supported them. And it was a good, you can say, interaction between the industry and ISRO. And if you talk to any of the industry people who have worked with ISRO, you will definitely find that they have benefited from that in terms of the intellectual capability and also the way they have been handled in delivering. But now what is happening is, we are now trying to increase the pace of our activity, because we have reached a stage where more number of launches are going to be done. So the industry also can now actually make use of this, and this can start getting...
Sir, if I may interrupt you, 3 questions in one. In terms of your own work and in terms of what ISRO has done lately, we ordinary people only understand launches. In terms of launches, what's been the most significant thing we have done so far? And what is the next landmark that we expect going ahead?
Yeah, if you look at, it's like I was telling you earlier, the primary objective of ISRO's activity is to address specific issues. So for that, today we have about 42 satellites in operation. But what we need for the country is probably more than double this, for in terms of observation activities, in terms of communication requirements, in terms of navigation. So one of the key things required for us is to increase the number of launches we can do, because we want to make it cost effective. If you go outside and get them launched, you are going to pay huge amounts of the money for that. So one of the key things is to increase the number of launches. So right now what we are paying attention to is now that we have overcome the problem of geostationary transfer orbit communication satellite, 2-ton, 4-ton class, so we are trying to make sure that we do it at a number of launches which is very significantly higher, so that in the next 5 years, for example, we have more than 60 launches to bring to a level where the country's requirements of observation, communication and navigation can be met with the number of satellites that we are going to put. So this is the prime objective, this is what we are trying to push, and towards this we are trying to engage the industry in a bigger way, giving them also a sort of a carrot saying that you have an opportunity to actually make commercially viable thing. But not only that, today by virtue of what we have established in terms of credibility in this system, the industry has an opportunity to capture a portion of the global market. So while they can supply to India itself certain amount, they can also capture a certain part of the global market, which is actually a very significant market there. While we ourselves as a government institution, we would not be looking at this, but we want in the country, the industry to take this opportunity and move ahead.
So that's
what we are trying to do.
That's why it's very significant that ISRO has partnered with FICCI on this seminar, and we are very happy at ThePrint to be further partners in this, because it's also to bridge the Delhi-Bangalore gap. We keep talking of bridging the Delhi-Bombay gap, but there's a Delhi-Bangalore gap as well. Manu?
So you talked about competition, and I'm glad you brought the point up, because there's a lot of competition in the space market, especially with our neighbor China. So China has mastered the art of using space for both constructive and destructive purposes. So how do we stand from the technological point of view to exploit the domain of space in a disruptive manner if the need ever comes to that?
No, what I would say is currently we are still engrossed with the issue of bringing our capability to a certain level. We have not really looked at the other part of the activity, if using space for different purposes. Right now we are still looking at how we can improve our capability, and you need to also understand that in terms of the resources that are being made available for the activity, you cannot compare what is happening in China and what's happening in India. Just to give you an idea of if you put together all the money we have spent right from our inception till today, probably will be less than a fraction of what these countries spend in a year. So you cannot compare them in that fashion. And we are also, because of the need, we are still restricting ourselves to meet the basic requirements. We still do not have the necessary, you can say, resources being made available for looking at these activities.
So what is the biggest gap between our requirements and what we have available?
Today, like I said, probably we have about 42 satellites providing. We may need double this number to meet our primary requirements at reasonable cost.
Are there specific areas where we have a gap? Is it in farm activity, or is it for communication? Is it for surveillance?
Yeah, all of them put together. Communication today, if you look at, today we have capability in terms of DTH. If you look at, we are probably maybe providing about 30 to 40% through our own system. And if you look at in terms of surveillance, no amount of observation is adequate, because you want continuous availability, etc. And all these low Earth orbiting satellites, they take 90 minutes to go around Earth. So they can look at specific spot for a finite period. So you need a large number of constellation of such satellites. And in terms of communication, we need to cover the high throughput capability, large bandwidth to entire all the panchayats and all that. So we are trying to bring in a few of them in the next couple of years. We are bringing in almost 100 gigabits capacity in high throughput satellites. One will go up in the beginning of next year and the following one in the next year. So we are trying to make sure that all these technological capabilities are added and bring in. So it is, currently we have all the basic elements, but numbers have to be increased.
So if I can take you to a more topic of larger interest in the public, is always your missions to the moon. Chandrayaan 2 is coming up, as we know, early next year. So there was also an initiative this time around to have a private Indian team Indus, put up a rover and try to land and maneuver it. So can you give us an update on that? Is it on target? And what is your plan for Chandrayaan 2 this time around?
See, our plan for Chandrayaan 2, we have an orbiter, a lander and a rover, and all the flight hardware now is getting integrated and it is going through the test phase. So we are targeting for first quarter of 2018 for the launch of this Chandrayaan 2. Now the other one what you are asking about is actually an Indian entrepreneur group which is trying to compete in Google Lunar Express thing. There are a lot of challenges for them.
It's a private rover, moon
it's
rover,
a private
yes.
This thing.
Team Indus.
Team Indus. So what there actually there is a lot of challenge for them. Lot of challenge both in terms of technology, because it's not easy to bridge the gap of building the technological capability needed for an activity like this. But at the same time, it is the desire to perform, it's the desire to do things which is driving them. Second thing is there is also constraint to them for in terms of getting the funding required. What ISRO is providing to them is actually a launch opportunity for taking their particular satellite and putting it into a lunar transfer trajectory. But much of the work they have to do still, and there are still quite a few challenges ahead for them.
So we also have one more specific challenge right now, which is specific to the wedding season, which is a band in the background. So I think somebody has gone to ask them to be silent, but I don't think they will be. So we need to raise our voices.
Voice. You have to always manage things.
You are much too soft-spoken for Delhi. Manu.
So we cannot match Delhi 8 for that.
One question that is not asked much is, about our plans for a manned flight to space, and I think it's been put away a bit. Is there not a big priority for this, or is it a resource thing like you were talking about earlier? So?
No, one other thing is it's a matter of priority, because today definitely like what I've been telling, that if you have whatever amount of resources, you want to make sure the primary requirements are met first. So the manned mission thing, while we are doing certain critical technology developmental activities, because as and when the country decides that you want to do a manned mission and makes the resources available, you should not be found wanting. So you need to keep your level of technological competence built upon that. So in that context, we have done space recovery experiment or crew module re-entry experiment, and then developing certain tiles, and then developing a module where the environmental control is there. We are also going to do shortly an experiment where pad abort test, that means at the time of launch in case of difficulty how to retrieve the crew module. While we are doing all this at R&D level to keep the technological capability available, the primary task of manned mission itself is resource intensive, and as and when the country finds that it has got enough resources which can be made available for this activity, we will take it up. At this point of time, it is definitely not a priority item.
Professor Painton?
Mr. Kumar, in agriculture and in general for the country, water resource management is going to be a very important area. Do we have the satellites to do contour mapping at a micro level to advise people in the villages how they can harvest water, and guide the engineers, if they listen to us, how to do water harvesting in localized areas? Do we have that kind of capability?
Yes, sir, we do have such capability, and currently more and more states have started using them. Just to give you a couple of examples, the Kakatiya mission and then many other states, today what we are providing is almost the entire surface water map of all the water bodies which are existing. Every 10 days an update is done, and then some of the states have started using, in addition to the surface water map of water bodies, in situ measurements of depth and other information, and making use of them for actually managing the water. And also tribals department, for example, is making use of such water body information to provide alternate livelihoods for inland fisheries, and many such activities are going on.
So 6 months from now, Do you foresee Team Indus actually having a launch or missing a launch?
It's a very difficult question to answer. Today, the probability is on the lower sides.
On the lower side. But everybody will do what they can, to make it possible.
Things could change.
So may not be the best in the world, but this is what FMCG industry calls Sasta, Sundar or Tikau. Cheap, good looking and durable.
Yeah, precisely.
And robust. I believe ISRO technologies are very robust.
Yeah, that's precisely the point. So today in the country we have the first 180 nanometer technology, producing results, bringing out products, and now we are trying to see how this capability can be improved to from 180 to maybe 100 and even lesser, slightly lesser. But some of these things we are doing now.
Question right in the back. Who has the microphone? Go ahead.
Rashid Kidwai from the India Sanitation Coalition, sir. We're all extremely proud of ISRO, especially your delivery with quality at much lower prices in the world. In the sanitation field, one of the major constraints is the availability of water. Space has cracked that in terms of sanitation up in the air. Is it possible for you to develop the same kind of technology at a price that would be affordable even to below poverty line, which would help the Prime Minister's Swachh Bharat mission?
Yeah, probably if we had done the manned mission, probably we would have had those technologies with us ourselves. But since we have not done that, today I don't think ISRO will be in a position to work on that, because what you are asking is basically those who have done already the manned mission, they have done some work in this.
Dinesh Trivedi, Member of Parliament, former railway minister who actually tried to reform the railways and paid for it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I always say jokingly, no, TV is on, I may not, wouldn't like to do it.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that there's some similarity between me and perhaps Gandhiji. And people would say, what audacity. The only similarity is that we were thrown out of a running train. And we both became very popular after that. So, on a serious note, let me compliment you with the rest of not only India but the world. And we are indeed very proud. And I always say that the world is getting redesigned, and the redesigning of the world is done by Indians, perhaps in America. So if you look at Satyam Shivam Sundaram, Satya of Microsoft, Shiva of HCL, and Sundar of Google, they're all Indians. Right. So it rhymes very well. Even we see the astronaut of Indian origin, whether it is Chawla or Sunita Williams of Indian origin. So we can do it. The talent and capacity you talked about. And we have enough talent to even adopt. Like we have already adopted this music. We have even forgotten that the music is still going on. So we have tremendous capacity. And like when we had only one Air India. Can you imagine if it was only one Air India?
I think everybody's lucky we haven't started dancing. That's the usual instinct. Shadi music on. Go ahead.
No, I almost felt like. So, now the capacity which you talked about, if Air India and Indian Airlines stayed, then we would not have really met up with the capacity. And the talent is amazing. That's why we had so many different airlines coming. I perhaps think that maybe you are sitting at the same perhaps situation where we have enough talent and India can do whatever they want to do. And you are playing a historical role. I'm aware that you are encouraging a lot of talent. I'm personally aware of it. And that's what you said, that you're also inviting the private sector. So my question is, like all MPs, they have long story before they ask a question. Question is, what do you think the next step in this particular next 5 years from now?
Now, like you pointed out, sir, it is precisely that reason why in ISRO as an organization, being a government organization, if we limit the activities to ourselves, the country as a whole is not going to be sufficiently benefited, while we might deliver certain things. That's where we are now trying to make sure, build capacity in the country, capacity in the organization, in the industry, in the academia. In each of these areas, we are trying to make a difference and we are trying to move ahead. and enable the Indian industry to provide solutions not only to ISRO and India but also to the world. That is our target. That towards that only we are trying to make many of the event, whatever today and tomorrow's event is also part of such a thing. And like I said, we have already to some extent successful, because at least few of the companies which have been working with us have actually acquired international companies, and then now they are actually delivering to outside the country also. So we will continue to do to the best of our ability, enabling the country.
I am Dr. Selvamurthy. I am the president of Amity Science and Technology in University. I was part of DRDO, and I have seen the growth of ISRO for a very long time, 4 decades. And I just like to know from you, who have managed such massive programs like launch vehicles, satellites, and so on. This model can be emulated in many of the S&T institutions, be it in the strategic or non-strategic sector. So what would you think in your model of ISRO in terms of program management, because these are huge programs running in hundreds of crores? How did you keep that timelines? And also, how did you manage the people, even in failures, some of the rare failures in ISRO, you managed people. How do you interface with the stakeholders? How did you see the Six Sigma in terms of reliability of your launches? So can you throw us some light so that all the science departments, maybe they can emulate some of these models, adapt to their own ecosystem?
Yeah, probably what we need to appreciate is 2 things. In India as a whole, one of the things we need to learn is respect the other person for what he is worth. Majority of the time we find we somehow as a country or as a set of people, we lack that a way of appreciating the other person for whatever he's worth, giving too much importance to self. So once you start breaking that as a barrier, then questioning, accepting questioning, decision you make, whatever you want to make, you make your decision, but you still allow yourself to be questioned by people, because what it does is it improves, may not be immediately, but over a period of time it changes the system. So like I was trying to tell, if you look at ISRO's program, project management and project teams, what it has done is by subjecting the people who are running the programs a method of being questioned, it is not restricting them to take decisions. It still allows them to take what decisions they have to do, because they have to deliver in a finite time. If we simply go on questioning and then if every question has to be answered to the satisfaction of everybody, it is never going to work. So actually the problem of posing questions, finding answers to that part of it, so it allows people to understand the limitations of what they are doing, but also it gives them freedom that they have to still deliver. For that, they have to make decisions which may not be the best at that point of time, but it is good enough for delivering under the parameters of operation. For example, we have to put a system to work. You have got an environmental condition. Within those environmental conditions, if the solution is going to work, I am ready to go ahead. It may not be the best solution. It may not be academically or technically best, but it's a good enough solution for the problem on hand. So 2 things I would say. One is we need to learn to respect the other person. Second is we need to allow ourselves to be questioned.
Question comes from the back. You sit in Bangalore, you preside over this great scientific institution which works at the cutting edge of science, technology, modern research, inquiry. How do you look at great popularity of superstition in our country? Astrology, for example. We recently did a story that alumni of Indian Institute of Science were going to hold an astrology conference, and I think because there was a lot of derision, they stopped it. But as space scientists, how do you respond to astrology? Professor Narlikar said to me that he gets most irritated that even the Pune phone book keeps listing his institute as Institute of Astrology, not Astronomy.
See, though science and technology has learnt many things, understood many things, there are so many things which we are still not aware of. So what I would only say is, today our knowledge is not good enough to counter or support those arguments. So what we would like to do as a scientific community is, don't come to conclusions at any given point of time. Keep doing experiments and try to find out whether there is any corroborative or non-corroborative evidence for that.
Do you believe in astrology? Do you check the panchang before launching?
No, I don't do that.
So one of your predecessors said that you should be cautious about launching too many satellites at the same time. He was referring to 104, I think Dr. Madhavan Nair. And he said the danger is that you are spreading so much debris, it can damage your more substantive and longer lasting satellites. And you may lose millions of dollars.
Yeah, what probably we need to appreciate here is the altitude at which these satellites are put are such that within a finite time they will all decay and then get into this thing. They do not form the category where they will become like problems.
Lethal debris.
Yeah. So if you go to higher altitudes, then those issues are there. But in this particular case, they are all in a category where in a finite period of time they will all decay and they will not form part of the debris.
I'm Colonel Kuber, CEO of Sugosha. If most of us were to be asked a question, can you recall one success story in India? I think we all would. The first thing that comes to the mind is ISRO. And I think it's a great success story. The question is, while China is talking about 3,000 launches, are we there? Are we ever trying to compete? And if we talk of all this make in India and all the thing that is happening, can it be achieved only by ISRO alone? If I were to do it, I could probably do it, because you just have to expand the success story across the geography, and I think we would have achieved the aim of make in India. And second question, sir, which I have is, with sub-meter resolution that you are having today, we were talking about 5.8 meters some time back, and today we are talking about sub-meter resolution. Can we virtually seal the Indian Ocean region, the borders, and also take care of the infiltration that's taking place in J&K? Can we actually do it? And why are we, buying things from outside when the capability resides inside?
Now, coming to your first question, see, like earlier also probably I tried to answer, what works in one place may not work in another place. While you can take your lessons from that, you have to tweak and you have to find effective ways of dealing with it in your own system. Now, coming to your second point, that's where I was trying to tell, while basic capabilities exist, to meet all the requirements, you also need numbers. And then today, for example, if you take any low Earth orbiting satellite, it goes around the Earth once in 90 minutes. So you cannot look at specific locations on a continuous mode. You need probably many places 24/7, or at least if not 24/7, in a day 5 to 6 observation capabilities. If you want to do that, you need a constellation, or you also need a technology where from geostationary platform also you can reach those kinds of resolution. So today there is a technology gap, not only for us, even for others. Nobody has today 24/7 observation capability of all regions of interest. So they make the best use of what is available. So this is where the numbers come into picture, and this is where also the resources what we were talking about comes into picture. Today at least we are in a position, if given the resources, we can increase the numbers and make it happen. Sometime back even that was not possible. So we are gradually improving, we are building the capacity in the country, so things are looking better.
This is Manoj from Wipro. So we are hearing about defense lobbying a lot. Is there something called space lobbying? Because we were trying to develop gas turbine engines for long in India and we were not able to succeed. And when we ask questions, they're telling this is because of lobbying. So is there something called space lobbying?
Yeah, space lobbying is there for different activities, because now space agencies are trying to work together, because all governments are reducing the funding to the space agencies in general. So one of the things that is happening is there are a lot of, you can say, humankind good activities which are done in terms of, for example, climate monitoring, weather information generation, for example, WMO, CEOS, Committee on Earth Observation Satellite, GEOS, they are all working together with whatever resources they have. They are trying to pull together observers in space and then share the information so that you can provide better weather forecasting or information on climate change activities or necessary information required for running the numerical weather models. So like this, so there is a lobbying for deciding on how we should actually plan our some of the Earth observation missions so that it can benefit the society at large.
Good evening, sir. I'm Chari from Sugosha Advisory. This is with regard to the launch locations. For some strange reason, we have only Sriharikota as a launch location. You take all spacefaring nations, including Japan, they have multiple locations. In fact, when you, in one of your earlier speeches, you also mentioned about Kulasekarapatnam. Are these things going to happen?
And somebody will have to acquire land for all this.
See, primarily, like what I have been trying to tell you, we are trying to increase the number of launches. See, today our problem is how to make it more efficient and more effective. Until you reach the limit of capability of that, you are not going to put so much of resources in putting a new launch pad or a launch site. So today, the 2 launch pads we have, we are trying to make it more and more effective by reducing the time between 2 launches and making it more efficient. And whatever actually produces a bottleneck in increasing that number, we are addressing. Today, for example, we are in almost completing a second vehicle assembly building, which is going to improve the number of launches using these 2 stations. So once we reach the limit of these 2, then by that time you should now start looking for a 3rd launch pad or a 3rd launch, different launch site. So today, all said and done, we do not have infinite resources. We need to maximize our resources. So towards that we are putting effort, and we immediately, probably beyond these 2, we may look at a 3rd launch pad. A new launch site is still some distance away.
Sir, you talked about Dr. Vikram Sarabhai in your earlier speech in the morning and how vital he had been in the Indian space program. So my question is, when this was the genesis was going on of the Indian space program, the Cold War space rivalry was at its peak. So do you think if there had been no Sputnik and there had been no Cold War space rivalry, the discourse of Indian space program could have been very different from what it has been?
Yeah, probably if you look at the inspiration for space program itself came because there was a launch, there was a Sputnik. If that had not happened, what would have been the scenario is difficult to imagine.
Sir, I am Arvind Kumar. I am from LSR College, University of Delhi. My question is about the dependency of launching heavy satellite. Earlier we were dependent on European spaceport. So do we have developed capabilities?
Yeah, today for example we have reached about 4-ton capability in our GSLV Mark III. Our next launch will be very close to 4-ton. And then beyond that, we are looking at multiple ways of tackling this. One is improving the weight handling capability of these launchers by doing certain improvements and bringing in a semi-cryogenic engine in place of our liquid engines, and also looking at building a more capable launch vehicle. But also on the other side, as the satellite sizes are shrinking for same functionality, we are also looking at, even for communication, bringing in the electric propulsion system, which helps us make equivalent of 6-ton satellite with a 4-ton satellite. So we are trying to look at all this. We have already put a electric propulsion system in one of the satellites, which is already up in orbit. We are using it for station keeping. In future, we will also use the electric propulsion system for going from transfer orbit to the actual geostationary orbit. So we are working on multiple fronts to deal with this situation, and we definitely want to make sure that we have within the country capability to deal with whatever we want to launch into space.
So the resource question came through several times, and you referred to it several times. So if there's one area of focus where you would have, wanted more resources from the government, could you identify one area that you would want?
No, actually, the resource, the way it actually limits you is, see, like when we want to increase the capacity, you need to increase the facilities. Now, most of the time what happens when there is a constraint on the resource, the immediate activity which cannot wait, you take care. So all the facility building which will help you increase the numbers, etc., they get the hit. So if you want 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, instead of 6 launches to 10 launches per year, what you are doing, 18 to 20, you need to invest now for that. So if you do not do now, same thing will continue.
Do you see the Japanese model of collaboration as something which will be a very big part of
Japanese want to launch manned space missions by 2020, and they want a large collaboration with ISRO.
So will that also work in terms of resource sharing, because that's one thing that if you can collaborate together?
No, right now we have had some discussion with the Japanese agency, but at this point of time the things that are getting discussed are more than the manned mission what you talked about, a joint lunar mission where maybe sample return, that is the one which is getting discussed. We are also trying to engage them with what we call a dual frequency scatterometer, which will give better information on the ocean wind vectors, which is one of the essential components for numerical weather model. So we have not reached the point what you are talking about.
It's a wonderful break from politics and all the negative stuff that goes on in Delhi to talk about science. So we'll have one more session with him, I promise you. But before that, all of you have to promise me to be able to answer the question on what is dual energy scatterometer.
Dual frequency.
Dual frequency scatterometer. At least I got that almost right. So, Dr. Kiran Kumar, thank you very much. It's been wonderful having you on Off the Cuff, and it's so encouraging to have so much positivity. Thank you very much, and do come back to Off the Cuff to our next edition. Thank you.